Hello and welcome everyone to a new episode from the Menopause Symposium. My name is Wattar. I'm a menopause specialist from London. I'm joined by my friend and colleague Vikram Talaulikar, who's a menopause specialist from North London. Vikram, how are you this lovely weekend?
I'm good. And I hope you're having some rest over this long bank holiday weekend, Basil.
Fortunately on call, but still we want to keep producing some content for our viewers. So today you kindly picked a very interesting article for us comparing Fezolinetant and Elinzanetant, and that are the two new NK3 antagonists, and they're really exciting news in addition to our repertoire of medications to manage vasomotor symptoms in the menopause. So perhaps, Vikram, can you give us a quick overrun on how these two agents work and maybe how they differ a little bit between them?
Okay. So we got the license for use of Fezolinetant for moderate to severe vasomotor symptoms of menopause. This happened in UK beginning of last year, around January, February. So between us, I think, Basil, you and me, we've used this in the private sector
Yeah.
for a reasonable number of patients. Elinzanetant is not yet licensed in the UK, and it's in fact still continuing to do some more trials across the world, I think mainly in the US, but we're waiting for it in the UK, hopefully in the next year or two. Both of them are NK3 receptor antagonists, and they basically block the NK3 receptors in the KNDy neurons in the hypothalamus. So as the estrogen levels fall during menopause, these neurons fire a lot and they cause the temperature dysregulation, they cause the hot flushes. So if you block the NK3 receptors, then therefore you're going to reduce the number of flushes, this intensity, severity of these flushes. And certainly with Fezolinetant, we have seen in clinical practice, yes, it does work. And there has been some recent safety profile monitoring requirements with relation to the liver enzymes that we are following. Because as the clinical use increases, that's really when we get most of the real life scenario information about these medications. So it's interesting to see head to head, how do they perform early days, but let's see what the paper says.
Indeed. So this is this pairwise meta-analysis by the Oliveira and et al. And it's published very recently in Maturitas. And I basically looked into all randomized trials that compared either Fezo or Elin to placebo, and that includes patients with natural surgical menopause. Now, clearly they did the right thing and they excluded crossover studies because it's hard to combine them with, a placebo-controlled trial. And then they excluded studies that are not randomized or patients with, uncontrolled chronic or acute illness, those that are on illicit drugs, or they have mental health conditions. They followed the risk of bias assessment tool from Cochrane, and I think we all fairly familiar with these recent trials from for covering both Fezo and Elinzanetant, and they're generally very good quality trials, and they've done to high level. So when we see here a lot of green in the figure, that is telling us there is somewhat reduced risk of bias in these trials, and we can take them at a good confidence level. What they searched the literature and they identified these 10 randomized trials they reported primarily on the frequency and severity of vasomotor symptoms, as well as ability of the agent to achieve more than 50% reduction in the overall frequency of VMS and quality of life scale, as well as adverse events. What are your thoughts on measuring these, assessing vasomotor symptoms in research? It could be quite a problematic thing, particularly I think some of the trials, particularly those for Fezo, included only women with moderate or severe, so they did not include everyone. So the representation of it might be a bit tricky, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I think it's the research requirements for the pharma companies that often determines it rather than the real scientific goal. Because I think for FDA or other companies, you've got to demonstrate you have X number, 7 or 8 or more flushes in a day. And they will only really then assess the reduction in the flushes or vasomotor symptoms And so the trials are left to recruit participants who have that many, the moderate or the severe number. They can't really recruit the ones with less because that would affect their trial sort of analysis or design.
Yeah.
So I guess we have to take it what best the pharma companies can do in that situation. And in a way, because it's a new medication, you would be kind of looking to use it for the worst affected women. So these are the women with moderate to severe symptom. So although it's not covering everybody, I guess for the initial studies until we get real life data, one would say it's okay. Let's see what effect these have on the women most affected with moderate or severe symptoms.
Indeed, indeed. So we will interpret that in terms of the external validity of these findings. So when we look at the meta-analysis, and in the first set of two forest plots we're seeing here is basically the efficacy of both Fezo and Ellen to reduce more than 50%, to achieve more than 50% reduction in vasomotor symptoms. And we can see a clear effect where they are both um, achieving better values compared to placebo only. And we all know there's about 30% placebo effect in managing vasomotor symptoms and menopausal symptoms. So this is statistically significant, although unfortunately they only included two trials in each comparison. And while these two trials were, the trials were of decent number, and I think we all want to see bigger sort of effect sizes and sample sizes in these trials. And if we look at the bottom forest plot, and this has looked into the quality of life improvement for elinzanetant, and we can see there is some marginal improvement depending on the doses, and it probably with some degree of certitude that the dose of above 100 maybe is achieving more effect, although the forest spot is almost touching zero, so we're not very sure about that. What are your thoughts on these findings, Vikram?
Thank you, Basil. You're the stats expert, man. But I think what it's showing is that elinzanetant at 100 milligrams or a bigger dose, more than 100, seems to be marginally more effective if you look at the 45 milligram or a lower dose of the fezolinetant. But head to head, very little to compare. Both seem
Mhm.
effective for control of vasomotor symptoms. And I think, as you pointed out before when we discussed combining the less than 45 milligram dose may not be the best strategy here because actually the
Correct.
30 milligram dose with fezolinetant is no longer being used or being recommended. So we really just have to concentrate on the 45 milligram fezolinetant dose there. And then comparing it to the above 100 milligram elinzanetant, both are effective, marginally better quicker action for elinzanetant, but both agents could be very useful in clinical practice.
Indeed, I think there were some methodological choices that the authors have made here to achieve this meta-analysis, which might explain this. So you're very right. And in this final slide, we see that the elinzanetant in its lower dose, less than 100, had some statistical significance in reducing the frequency and severity of VMS at 2 weeks. But it's really in the dose that is above the 100 that we can see with the p-values being consistently positive at 2, 4, 8, and 12 weeks onward. So I think it's a clear, so as a dose finding exercise, we can see that the benefits is really lying in a dose above 100. Some similar effect we're seeing again in the fezolinetant in a dose above 45, although they picked a p-value of significance of 0.01, while in reality often we use 0.05. So on the left side here we can see that the fezolinetant had close to effectiveness, but probably we will need slightly bigger size studies to have a bit more certainty in the findings. And both agents overall did not show major adverse events in terms of discontinuation of the treatment and GI disturbance, although there were some variations. So overall adverse outcomes were slightly higher with the elinzanetant, while the GI disturbances were slightly higher with the fezolinetant. But these are very, very small numbers, so I think we take them at their face value at this point.
Mm.
Um, have you seen any of these adverse outcomes in your clinical practice using Fezo?
No, luckily not. So with whatever 10, 15, 20 patients we've put through with fezolinetant. Fortunately, no major side effects. Luckily, we haven't come across anybody with any liver enzyme issues so far. So that is good. And again, as you said, the numbers are small. In fact, the fezolinetant here, I think numbers are in excess of 3,000, and there are some 600
Yeah,
odd numbers for elinzanetant. So really small numbers to kind of base what will be the real life side effects for many, many millions and hundreds and thousands of women who will take this in future. But overall, the safety profile looks good. And I think the only thing to consider in real life scenario is the liver enzyme monitoring now that we are kind of seeing some patients have those liver enzyme elevation with fezolinetant.
indeed. And I think we're waiting for further sort of regulatory assessment of both
Pharmacovigilance.
these agents to come to the market. But it's exciting addition, and I think good news for women with menopause that we have, we seem to be having more and more non-hormonal agents to rely on. And
Yes.
yeah,
And it was a shame, Basil. I think you agree. It was a shame that NICE did not give a go through for fezolinetant on their first analysis. I think all of us have written back to NICE to consider and reconsider their decision. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have a licensed non-hormonal option available for many women out there who may or who can't take HRT or no, may not wish to take HRT.
Indeed, I think particularly relevant to for those with cancer, for example, that often suffer from these horrible VMS that you have not many options to deal with. Great, thank you very much, Vikram, for today. Thank you for all our listeners, and we appreciate all your comments, likes, and subscriptions to the channel. Please continue to follow us and send us your questions and requests for future topics, and we'll see you very soon. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.